It started with petty fines, fake violations, empty threats. Then they showed up at my door, badges flashing, voices firm, told me I was under arrest, said I had violated HOA regulations. What they didn't know? I'm a U.S Marshal, and they just tried to arrest the wrong guy. Let me start from the beginning. Before we dive in, let me know where you're watching from. Karen was the kind of person who thrived on control. She didn't just like rules, she lived for them. And when there weren't enough rules to enforce, she made them up. I should have known she'd be a problem the first time I met her, but I had no idea just how far she'd go to try and control me. It started small, a letter in the mailbox. The envelope was crisp, the HOA logo stamped at the top in pretentious gold lettering. Dear homeowner, you are required to register your property under the Oak Ridge HOA and comply with all community guidelines, including monthly dues and maintenance fees. I almost laughed. Required? That was funny, considering I had specifically chosen this property because it wasn't part of any HOA. I flipped to the second page. A fine. $250 for failure to maintain property aesthetics. I glanced at my yard, freshly cut grass, a clean driveway, my truck parked neatly by the house. What exactly was I failing to maintain? I tossed the letter in the trash and moved on with my day. Then, another letter arrived. And another. By the end of the week, my mailbox was stuffed with violation notices. $100 for unauthorized exterior modifications. Nothing had changed. $150 for excessive noise disturbances. I worked late shifts. I was barely home. $200 for failure to submit a landscaping plan. I didn't even know that was a thing. Karen wasn't just making up violations. She was testing me, seeing if I'd roll over and pay. I ignored every single notice. Then, she changed tactics. I stepped outside one morning to find her standing in my driveway, clipboard in hand, watching. She didn't look away when I met her eyes. She wanted me to know she was there. When I walked over, she made a show of checking her gold wristwatch, as if I had kept her waiting. "Oh, good," she said, smiling like a predator playing nice with its food. "I was hoping to catch you." I leaned against my truck, arms crossed. "Something you need, Karen?" She flipped through her papers, plucked one out, and held it up like a court summons. "I wanted to personally remind you about the outstanding violations on your property. I noticed you haven't submitted any payments yet." I barely glanced at the paper. "Karen, I'm not part of your HOA." Her smile didn't waver. "Well," she said sweetly, voice dipped in fake politeness. "Oak Ridge Estates has certain expectations for the surrounding properties. It's only fair that everyone contributes." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Fair?" I shook my head. "Karen, let me make this real clear. I don't answer to you. You can stop stuffing my mailbox with this nonsense because it's going straight in the trash." For a fraction of a second, her mask slipped. Her grip tightened on the clipboard. Her jaw clenched. Then, just as fast, she smoothed it over with another manufactured smile. "Well," she said, adjusting her blazer, "I do hope you reconsider. You wouldn't want to make things difficult for yourself." I tilted my head. "That a threat?" She gave a light, breathy laugh. "Oh, not at all. Just a friendly reminder that this community values cooperation." I took a step forward. "And here's a reminder for you," I said, my voice dropping lower. "If I catch one more fake violation notice in my mailbox, I'll be filing a harassment complaint. You can play queen of the HOA all you want, but you don't have any authority over me." Her smile twitched. Then, without another word, she turned on her heel and walked back down my driveway, her heels clicking against the pavement. I watched her go, shaking my head. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. The next morning, I stepped outside to find a pile of garbage dumped on my lawn. A week later, my mailbox had been knocked over. Then, the whispers started. Neighbors giving me sideways glances, muttering when I walked by. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Until I ran into Jim at the gas station. Jim was an old-timer, lived in the neighborhood for years, didn't talk much, but when he did, it was usually worth listening to. He gave me a sympathetic look as he filled up his truck. "Hope you get things sorted out soon," he said. I frowned. "Sorted out?" Jim sighed. "Karen's been telling people you've got legal trouble. Says you're one of those problem homeowners who tries to dodge responsibilities. Even mentioned something about a warrant. I blinked. A warrant? That was a new one. Jim shook his head. You know how she is. HOA, politics, HOA, politics. This wasn't politics. This was a full-blown smear campaign. And the next morning, I got a letter marked Final Notice from the Oak Ridge HOA Legal Department. Inside was a bold, official-looking statement. Failure to comply with HOA policies will result in legal action. Please be advised that a warrant has been issued for your continued refusal to adhere to community guidelines. I stared at the page for a long second. Then I laughed. A deep, genuine laugh. Karen had finally lost her damn mind. She actually thought she could scare me with a fake warrant. And that's when I realized she wasn't going to stop. She was pushing harder, escalating. And the next time she tried something, she was going to regret it. Because what Karen didn't know, she had just picked a fight with the U.S. Marshals. Karen's petty fines and fake violations were one thing, but when I got a letter claiming there was a warrant for my arrest, that's when I knew she was getting desperate. I held the paper up to the light, turning it over in my hands. The formatting looked official, the wording sounded serious, but I had seen real warrants before. I had signed off on real arrest orders. And this was laughable. For starters, no agency was listed. A real warrant would have come from a judge, not some fictional Oak Ridge HOA legal department. There was no badge number, no legal case reference, and the signature at the bottom, Karen Whitmore, HOA president. I nearly choked on my coffee. Karen actually thought she could scare me into submission by pretending she had the power to arrest me. I was almost impressed by the sheer delusion. Almost. I tossed the letter onto my desk and sat back, fingers steepled. Karen had just escalated. She had moved past HOA harassment and straight into legal fraud. I could have called her out immediately, could have sent her a cease and desist. But why do that when I could let her dig an even deeper hole? So I didn't react. I didn't storm down to her house. I didn't confront her. Instead, I waited. And sure enough, Karen took the bait. The next morning, I woke up to a red warning notice taped to my door. Final warning, failure to pay. Outstanding fines will result in arrest. I snorted. Karen was really committing to the act. I left the notice exactly where it was and went to work. By the time I got home, there was another one. And the next day, 2 more. Karen wanted to make sure I saw them. She wanted me to think I was one step away from being dragged out in cuffs. She had no idea that was never going to happen. Then, on Friday morning, I stepped outside and found 2 men standing in my driveway. Matching uniforms, clipboards in hand, and cheap plastic badges clipped to their belts. I stared. They stared back. Then one of them cleared his throat. "Are you the homeowner?" I folded my arms. "Who's asking?" The taller one straightened his shoulders. "We're with the Homeowners Association Enforcement Division. We're here to discuss your outstanding violations." I almost laughed. Homeowners Association Enforcement Division? Karen really hired fake cops. I tilted my head, keeping my voice neutral. "Is that so?" The second guy, shorter, stockier, trying too hard to look intimidating, nodded. "We have an active warrant for your arrest." I raised an eyebrow. "You don't say." The taller one held up his clipboard. "Per HOA code violations, you've repeatedly failed to comply with community regulations and have outstanding fines. We're here to bring you in." I let the silence stretch. Then I smiled. "All right," I said. "Let's see the warrant." The short guy blinked. "You already got the notice." No. I shook my head. "The real one. Show me the court-issued arrest warrant." Tall guy shifted on his feet. "Well, the HOA board issued it." "Oh, the HOA board," I nodded slowly. "And does the HOA have legal authority to issue arrests?" They both hesitated. I could practically see the gears in their heads turning, trying to figure out how to answer that without sounding like complete morons. I let them sweat for a moment longer, then I sighed, reached into my back pocket, and pulled out my badge. Not a cheap plastic one, not something you could buy online. A real, authentic U.S. Marshal badge. I held it up between 2 fingers, letting them get a good long look, and the moment they saw it, their faces turned white. I tilted my head. "You two just attempted to detain a federal officer." Tall guy's mouth fell open. Short guy actually took a step back. I smiled. Now, I continued, I have 2 questions. First, where exactly is your authorization to conduct arrests? Silence. Second, would you like to be charged with impersonating law enforcement before or after I run your names? That was it. That was it. That was all it took. Tall guy's clipboard hit the ground. Short guy turned and booked it down the street. And me? I stood there, arms crossed, watching them scramble like cockroaches. I let them go, because now I had them. And when I ran their names later that day, oh, I found so much more than I expected. Karen wasn't just running a fake security operation. She was running a full-blown extortion scheme, and she had no idea that I was about to burn it to the ground. Karen had crossed the line. Fake fines, petty harassment. That was just the warm-up. Now, she was trying to stage arrests, and she was too stupid or arrogant to realize she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. I ran the names of the 2 officers who had tried to arrest me. Not real cops, not even licensed security. They were part of a phony private security firm Karen had put together, a bunch of rent-a-cops playing dress-up. But that wasn't the worst part. They had been pulling this scam on multiple homeowners, and somehow, it had worked. I started digging through public complaints, legal filings, and HOA financial records. Turns out, Karen's little HOA enforcement division had been doing this for months. She wasn't just faking violations. She was running a full-blown extortion racket. Here's how it worked. Find a homeowner who refused to join the HOA. Hit them with fake citations, fake fines, and fake liens. If they ignored them, escalate. Send the HOA police to scare them. If they still wouldn't pay, seize their property for unpaid debts. Resell the house to HOA-friendly buyers for a special assessment fee. It was organized theft. Homeowners had lost their houses over this. And somehow, no one had stopped her. Because Karen wasn't doing this alone. I pulled city records, searching for every legal dispute Karen had been involved in. And that's when I found it. A judge's name. A local magistrate, someone who had repeatedly ruled in Karen's favor, a judge who had signed off on HOA property seizures without verifying the claims. Either Karen had him in her pocket, or he was too lazy to check the facts. Either way, this was a gold mine, because if Karen's rulings weren't legal, every single HOA foreclosure she pushed through could be overturned, meaning lawsuits, refunds, criminal charges. Karen had built her power on fake authority, and I was about to rip it all away. But first, I needed to see how far she would go. So I baited her. I took one of her fake citations, the latest final notice warning of pending legal action, and I responded. I sent a formal request for a hearing, made it look like I was scared, like I was willing to negotiate. And Karen, she took the bait. The next day I got an email. A summons to an official HOA arbitration hearing. No location listed, just a time, a date, and a warning that failure to appear would result in further legal consequences. I almost laughed. Karen was about to walk straight into her own sting operation, and she had no idea. Karen thought she had me right where she wanted me. She believed I was scared. She believed I was finally breaking. She had no idea she was walking straight into a trap. The HOA arbitration hearing was set for Friday afternoon. No official courthouse, no legal venue. Just a generic meeting hall in a rented community center. Translation? This wasn't real. Karen had staged an entire fake legal proceeding, just like she had done to other homeowners. A mock trial designed to intimidate people into signing over property, paying bogus fines, or giving in to HOA extortion. I had zero intention of negotiating. I had every intention of ending this for good. So, I made my final calls. Local law enforcement, the district attorney's office, and the U.S. attorney's office. Because this wasn't just civil fraud. This was federal fraud, mail fraud, wire fraud, extortion. And now, it was time to let Karen bury herself. I arrived early, dressed in plain clothes, calm, relaxed. Karen was already there, sitting at the head of a long conference table, clipboard in front of her, a cheap wooden gavel resting at her side. A gavel. She actually brought a gavel. Behind her, 3 HOA board members trying and failing to look like real legal officials. Across from them, 2 homeowners I recognized, people Karen had targeted before. They looked nervous. Karen looked smug. She turned that fake, victorious smile on me the moment I stepped inside. "Glad you could make it," she said, gesturing toward an empty chair. I took my time, sat down slowly, folded my hands, then smiled back. "Of course," I said. "Wouldn't miss it." Karen launched into her speech immediately, reading off a list of fabricated violations, inflated fines, and legal threats that held zero weight. She used words like breach of contract and community infractions, carefully chosen terms that sounded legal but meant absolutely nothing. I wasn't listening to her, I was watching her. The way she fidgeted slightly every time she glanced down at her paperwork. The way she spoke faster when she read through her list of fines, like she was rushing past the details. The way she kept checking the clock, like she was waiting for something, or someone. She wasn't just trying to scare me, she was stalling. I leaned back in my chair, tilting my head. "Karen," I said, cutting her off mid-sentence. She blinked. I smiled. "Let me guess, the HOA police are on their way to escort me out of here?" The silence was loud. One of the board members shifted uncomfortably. Karen's eyes flickered to the door. Bingo. I checked my watch. "Well," I continued, standing up, "before they get here, why don't we call in some real legal professionals?" And right on cue, the doors burst open. Uniformed officers swarmed into the room. Karen's face went ghost white. The board members? Panic. One of them actually ducked under the table. And behind the officers, the assistant U.S. attorney, a woman with zero patience for HOA scams and a stack of legal documents ready to bury Karen alive. "Karen Whitmore," she said, stepping forward, unfolding an arrest warrant. "You are under arrest for fraud, extortion, impersonation of law enforcement, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud." Karen's mouth opened and closed. "No, wait, you don't understand," she shrieked. "Oh, we understand," I said, crossing my arms. "You just tried to hold a fake legal hearing to steal property from homeowners, and you sent fake officers to arrest me. Not a great look, Karen." She turned to the board, eyes wild. "Do something!" But the board, they were already distancing themselves, hands raised, silent, because Karen wasn't in charge anymore. She was alone. And as the officers cuffed her hands behind her back, she finally realized she had lost. "You're making a mistake," she shrieked. "This is all a misunderstanding." The U.S. attorney just shook her head. "We'll let the judge decide that." Karen kicked and screamed all the way out of the room. And me? I just watched, because Karen had spent years terrorizing this neighborhood. And now, she was finally paying the price. Karen wasn't just arrested, she was completely publicly humiliated, dragged out of her own fake courtroom, shrieking about misunderstandings and abuse of power as flashing police lights painted the walls behind her. The same people she had been terrorizing for years sat frozen in their seats, watching in stunned silence. And the moment the doors shut behind her, the room erupted. Some people were shocked, others were furious. Because suddenly, all those ridiculous HOA fees, all those mysterious fines, all those forced evictions, they weren't just bad management, they were a criminal operation. And the fallout? Oh, it was glorious. The moment the news broke, neighbors started talking. I wasn't the only one Karen had targeted. People came forward with stories of fake liens, forged HOA contracts, and illegal threats. One couple revealed that Karen had tried to force them to sell their home for unpaid dues on a property that had never even been part of the HOA. Another homeowner had paid thousands in bogus fines just to avoid the relentless harassment. Karen had spent years weaponizing the HOA, and now she was done. Within a week, the entire HOA board was under investigation. Within a month, the HOA itself was legally dissolved. No more phony citations, no more fake police, no more Karen. She tried everything to fight the charges, blame the board, blame the fake officers, even tried to claim she was the victim. But the evidence was overwhelming. Karen wasn't just facing fines, she was facing felony charges, fraud, wire fraud, extortion, impersonation of law enforcement. And when the judge finally handed down the sentence, she didn't get probation. She didn't get a fine. She got prison time. The same Karen who had spent years threatening people with legal action for breaking HOA rules. Now she was in a real cell with real bars under real authority. Meanwhile, the HOA was completely dismantled. The remaining board members scrambled to lawyer up. Every homeowner who had been scammed out of money got their refunds. The families Karen had pushed out of their homes filed lawsuits against her. And me? I was finally free. No more HOA, no more harassment. Just peace and quiet. And every time I walked past Karen's old house, now up for sale, stripped of its power, just another property on the market, I couldn't help but smile, because in the end, she thought she was untouchable. But she never saw the real law coming for her.